Welcome back to Horrifying Stories. It was 1984 when a serial killer escaped the prying eyes of investigators by passing a lie detector test. Having gained immunity of some sort, his killing spree continued on for almost 2 decades, with the actual death count believed to be 71 young women. This is their horrifying story. Viewer discretion is advised. Before starting the story, we'd appreciate if you can click the subscribe button. Your support will go a long way. Thank you and enjoy this week's episode. In July 1982, horror started to haunt Seattle when a dead woman's body with a pair of blue jeans tied around her neck was retrieved from the Green River. The body belonged to 16-year-old Wendy Lee Caulfield, who ran away from her foster home. Within the same month, there were 4 more women mysteriously disappeared, only for their bodies to be found in almost the same spot in the river. Since then, reports of missing women who ended up dead and thrown into the river became so frequent that the news no longer surprised the community. This prompted the King County Sheriff to gather a group of investigators and form the Green River Task Force to focus on hunting the man down. This serial killer's pattern targeted vulnerable young women. Some were runaways, while most were women linked to prostitution or drug addiction. The reported disappearances often happened along Highway 99, widely known as the Strip. The Strip was a street lined up with bars and where prostitution was known to be very rampant. The killer would slowly approach his victim, strike a conversation, eventually earning the victim's trust. In doing this, he would often use his son's photos, establishing an image of a harmless family man. It was either during or after their sexual activity that he would then choke the victim to death. Once dead, he would secretly dispose of the victim's body by throwing it into the waters of the Green River, or just along the riverbanks, thus earning for himself the nickname of the Green River Killer. Later on, he shifted his dumping site to a secluded and dark area south of the airport, not too far from the Strip. In most, if not all, of his dumping sites, police would find around 3 to 5 bodies of women. It was April 30, 1983 when they came so close to identifying who the Green River Killer was. 18-year-old Marie Malvar was dining with her boyfriend and pimp in one of the restaurants at Highway 99 when his boyfriend had to go out and make a telephone call. After the call, he went back inside the restaurant and found Marie no longer at their table. Worried, he hurriedly went into his car and drove to check if she was anywhere nearby. As he was driving slowly searching for his girlfriend, he suddenly noticed that Marie was actually in the passenger's seat of the truck ahead of him. He could see Marie talking to the guy driving the truck. He couldn't recognize who this guy was, wasn't sure what was exactly going on, and so he followed them. However, after getting caught up in a stoplight, he turned left following the truck's direction but found no traces of the truck. He had lost them. That same day, once again, he drove around the streets of Seattle to search for the pickup truck he saw earlier that day, this time with Marie's family. They carefully scanned through every corner as they drove around, until they found the exact same pickup truck, parked outside a quiet home at a cul-de-sac not too far from the Strip. They called the police to report the incident of Marie Malvar's disappearance, as well as their suspicion on the whereabouts of Marie and her abductor. Authorities heeded their call and went to the location and knocked on the door of the house the truck was parked at. A man named Gary Ridgway opened the door and confirmed with the authorities that he owned the truck. However, when asked about Marie Malvar, he plainly answered that he didn't have any idea who she was, and that no one else was inside his house but himself. The responding officer didn't notice anything suspicious about Ridgway, so he didn't force the issue. In the months that followed, Ridgway would once in a while get entangled with the Green River Task Force in multiple instances that linked him to prostitutes. At one point, he willingly cooperated in a dialogue with the authorities. He confirmed that he had been previously arrested for soliciting a prostitute. He also admitted he still continues to pick up girls from the Strip, even recognizing two of the presumed victims, but told officers he didn't hurt any of them. The investigation even went as far as Ridgway undergoing a lie detector test in 1984, and he smoothly passed the test. He maintained his innocence, but the police already secured his saliva swab, adding it to their case files. By spring of 1984, more than 40 victims' lives had already been claimed by the Green River Killer. Around the same time, the Green River Task Force received an unexpected letter from another serial killer. The infamous Ted Bundy surprisingly wanted to volunteer and help with the investigation. At that time, he was already on death row for years, following his conviction on multiple counts of murder, rape, burglary, and necrophilia. He proved to be a valuable asset to the investigation, as detectives were able to gather insights on what goes on in the mind of a serial killer and how it impacts his behavior. Ted Bundy suggested that the killer would most likely end up going back to where he dumped the bodies to perform necrophilia on them. This proved to be true for the Green River Killer later on. Bundy told detectives they should wait out at the site of a freshly dumped victim for a chance at catching the killer firsthand. However, the unthinkable happened. The Green River Task Force were taken aback when the killings had stopped. This was an extremely unusual behavior for serial killers. Experts say that there are only two reasons that a serial killer would stop the killing spree: either a successful arrest or the eventual death of the killer himself. By 2001, advancements in DNA technology paved the way for investigators to revisit evidence gathered from the Green River cases. Finally, scientists had found a solid link between the killer and two of the earlier victims recovered from the river back in 1982, and a third victim recovered from one of the dump sites in 1983. Almost 2 decades since the first body was retrieved, it has been identified that the Green River Killer was after all Gary Ridgway. His arrest ultimately ended the years of terror and fear that haunted Seattle. Gary Ridgway was a 52-year-old man who worked at Kenworth Truck Company as a truck painter. At the court, Ridgway pleaded not guilty, maintaining his stance that he had nothing to do with the deaths of these young women. Now, as investigators dig further, they uncover Ridgway's disturbing background. Growing up, he often accompanied his dad, who was a bus driver in their county. He often heard his dad scoff at prostitutes, telling him they're nothing but garbage. His stay-at-home mom, Mary, was nothing like any other stay-at-home moms. Neighbors and other parents at school recounted that she often dressed up provocatively, always wearing tight shorts and dresses, or short skirts in public, even in school events or meetings. At one point, Ridgway recalled wetting the bed as a teenager, and his mom washed him in the bathroom, including his genitals. Since then, he developed this sexual attraction to his own mom. Something extremely odd for a child to feel about his own mother. His twisted mental state also manifested once at 15 years old, when he tried to stab a young boy just to try how it works. He served in the U.S. Navy for 2 years after he graduated high school. When he got back from service, he found out his wife had cheated on him. They divorced, and since then, it has been a downward spiral for Ridgway when it comes to relationships. He got the job at Kenworth and eventually remarried, but as years passed, their marriage started getting rough. Eventually, his wife left him when his son was about 5 years old. It was then that he started to pick up girls at the Strip. For many years, he was able to resist his urges until his first victim in 1982. Apparently, in the years that the investigators saw a sudden drop of cases, it was also the same time that Ridgway met and dated 40-year-old divorcee Judith Mawson, around 1985. After living together for 3 years, they married in 1988. Mawson loved Ridgway, even describing their marriage as close to perfect and something that she had always dreamed of. He was good to her daughters and even became a true grandfather to her grandchildren. In their 13 years of marriage, she didn't have even the slightest clue of Ridgway's dark secret, up until the time he was arrested. To strengthen the case, experts began revisiting pieces of evidence obtained from the victim's clothing and Ridgway's clothing, and they found microscopic paint spheres that exactly match. These paint spheres could be traced back to a special kind of paint patented, and was only exclusively used at Kenworth in the early 80s. This established another solid evidence linking him to 13 Green River victims. With this new development, sensing he had no escape, Gary Ridgway met with his defense lawyers and shifted his plea to guilty. He admitted and confessed in detail many of the killings, based on what he can remember. He guided investigators to the other dump sites to locate some of the other victims' bodies, including Marie Malvar. He also admitted that he would go as far as cutting the fingernails of victims who scratched him before disposing of their bodies. To him, these women were just rags. There was no sign of remorse in Ridgway. Although it was believed that the real number was actually 71, he was charged with 49 counts of murder in November 2003. Equivalent to 49 life sentences, he is currently at the Washington State Penitentiary with definitely no chance of parole. After his sentencing, presiding Judge Richard Jones gave each of the victims' families a chance to say what they had to say to the man who mercilessly killed their loved ones.
You had said your memory, when it comes to all of the women you took, was gone. Our memory is not. In your words, you said that they didn't mean anything to you, but she meant everything to us.
She was a mother, she was a wife, she was a sister, and we miss her.
I wish for him to have a long, suffering, cruel death.
He's gonna go to hell, and that's where he belongs.
Mr. Ridgway, there are people here that hate you. I'm not one of them. You've made it difficult to live up to what I believe, and that is what God says to do, and that's to forgive. You are forgiven, sir.
Thank you for making it this far. If you liked this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to our channel. Let us know what you think about this episode in the comments below. Again, thank you and see you in the next one.